One of the most frustrating things about Feminist Frequency's videos is that in a rush to point the finger at something specific, she tends to oversimplify. On one hand, she recognizes that entertainment is a mirror.
I think it's important to critically engage with video games and comic books and movies and TV shows because it's a reflection of our society.
And she even acknowledges that media is not the sole influence on people's lives and socialization.
Although many factors influence our socialization, such as families and peer groups, schools and churches, the media plays a highly critical role.
But while she makes passing reference to other aspects of society which have an influence on people, her focus seems squarely on institutions, industries, and culture makers. While entertainment tends to mirror society, making it a two-way street, she seems to approach it as a one-way street. The way she typically presents things, the buck stops with writers, advertisers, toy companies, etc., to be socially progressive.
So Hollywood writers, let me remind you that women are not here for your inspiration, celebration, or to coax you out of your troubles. So comic book, TV and movie writers, and video game producers, stop relying on stereotypical tropes. Stop using violence against women as a way to further the storyline of your male hero. So here's a tip for all you Hollywood writers out there. It is in fact possible to have more than one woman in your script. Hollywood writers, I don't have a problem with you occasionally making some of your villains female, but you've got to stop writing women whose primary weapon is her sexuality. So, all you Hollywood writers, you should feel real guilty right about now for continually using the tired old mystical pregnancy trope to violate and degrade women's bodies on television. And Hollywood, get over your fear of strong, smart, talented women and stop contributing to the backlash by writing absurd and ridiculous straw feminist characters. So who's to blame? Kanye clearly, but also Rockefeller Records, Universal Music Group, the entire music industry, and how the market functions in general.
By help of the media, young men and boys are being trained to view and expect certain behaviors from women.
The Bechdel test is best when used as a tool to evaluate Hollywood as an institution. Hollywood, you need to get over the simplistic notion that sexy chicks doing dude stuff is somehow empowering.
Liquor ads take the worst possible masculine traits, repackage it, and sell it right back to them, continuing this cycle of sexist socialization.
What LEGO should have done if they were serious about expanding the LEGO universe to include girls is to actually include them in a meaningful way, not segregate and separate them into their own pink enclave.
I'm sure that every writer would love to believe that their stories shape society in some important way, but typically it's a bit more subtle and complicated than that. I want to examine her series on Legos because I think it's a good example of the limits of her approach.
LEGO claims to have spent millions of dollars and 4 years doing intensive research on this endeavor, and they've even budgeted $40 million to market to girls globally. So with all that, what has the company done to integrate girls back into the LEGO experience? So LEGO spent 4 years and millions of dollars to research the desires of girls to create another Barbie wasteland, and continues to ignore the fact that they already have a potentially great product for girls. It's called LEGO.
So LEGO's attempt to market to girls was a complete disaster in her eyes, but her analysis and proposed solution deserve some examination. My biggest problem with her series on Legos is that in a previous video on toys and advertisements, she said something which I really wish she would have stuck to her guns on within her LEGO series.
I was originally going to say that we need to hold the media accountable for what they're teaching our young people, but no, really? Advertising directed specifically at young people needs to stop. Altogether, no exception.
At this point, I would like to recommend the documentary Consuming Kids because it examines how marketing to children works. More to the point, I think that it is this suggestion that might be the solution she's looking for. My second problem with her LEGO video, and her approach in general, actually comes dangerously close to something I argue against in an upcoming video which I have titled Profit versus Women from my Tropes versus Feminist Frequency series. Some people have tried to justify things like gender stereotyping of toys or sexism in the media with something like, "Will someone please think of the corporations?" argument. And while I'm personally a bit too far to the left to make that argument myself, I still hold that profit is not a motive that we can ignore as part of the issue. In examining the path LEGO chose to go down, it helps to bear in mind that LEGO is a business out to make a profit, and that it also is competing within a larger market. I get the impression that Anita is a bit overly sentimental about LEGO and not quite cynical enough.
Legos are one of the most fantastic and creative toys ever developed. I mean, check this out. It's a LEGO Stegosaurus. It even has light-up eyes. Rawr.
Perhaps she needs to take a bit of her own advice.
It's important to remember that Lego is a business whose sole desire is to make a profit.
Now let's take a look at Anita's analysis of Lego's girl problem.
The real reason girls aren't interested in Legos as a whole is because for the last quarter of a century, the Lego group has been telling girls repeatedly that bricks are for boys. Number 1, marketing exclusively to boys. Lego has been intentionally designing, creating, and marketing almost the entire Lego universe specifically and exclusively to boys since at least the mid-1980s. Number 2, producing male-identified and male-centered themes and sets. Number 3, focusing on stereotypical boys' play scenarios with an emphasis on combat. Once Lego had doubled down on gendering all their products as for boys, they were backed into a corner where they were forced to create a distinct and separate for girls collection. Lego Friends is clearly marked as not for boys, which de facto reinforces that the rest of the Lego universe is for boys and for boys alone. Lego's logic surrounding giving girls what they want sounds an awful lot like self-fulfilling marketing. As Lisa Wade pointed out on the Ms. blog, executives are going to great lengths to explain that the line is based on research. This frame gives the company an excuse for reproducing the same old gender stereotypes that we see throughout our culture. In this way, they're trying to make it clear that they shouldn't be held accountable for the messages their products send.
Note here that her statements present the actions of Lego itself as the main source of the problem. They doubled down. They were forced into a corner to create a for girls line. Hold that in mind as we look at her solution.
Secondly, Lego needs to go back to the drawing board and create products that foster creativity and imagination that children of all genders will adore. They can start by de-emphasizing the macho testosterone and the combat, and create universally appealing sets that include occupations and adventure scenarios for children of all genders.
She speaks as if Lego is to blame and that they should aim for universal appeal, but much of her own views of advertising, child psychology, toy industry trends, and children's apparent preferences complicate her argument.
It's not that women and girls aren't interested in combat-based play. Aggression and competition are, of course, possible human behaviors for people of all genders. In our current patriarchal society, however, traits associated with men and masculinity are more highly valued.
Advertising aimed at youth is especially dangerous because young children are unable to differentiate between television programming and commercials. They are still developing the necessary critical skills. Youth may have a hard time recognizing that these commercials are teaching them what is expected, what is desired, and what is possible for their genders, for their careers, for love, relationships, and creative endeavors in the future.
On one hand, Anita sees companies like Lego in a dichotomy in which appealing to boys alienates girls, and appealing to girls means alienating boys. On the other hand, she views gender as a social construct, so in theory, girls could like exactly the same toys as boys, but they don't. It should be noted here that the process of socialization, particularly in regards to gender, is not quite as simple as what toys children play with. Even from an early age, before they are old enough to understand the implications, children internalize gender norms. Again, this has to do with more than just toy companies.
Although many factors influence our socialization, such as families and peer groups, schools, and churches,
gender might be a social construct, but gendered marketing works in a capitalist society because children are impressionable and society still holds those views to some extent. Anita is caught in a bind where she acknowledges that children respond to gender stereotypes, but expects for-profit companies to ignore this fact in the design and advertising of their products. This is easier said than done. Let's examine again what marketing exclusively to boys consists of. How to market exclusively to boys. Show only boys in the ads. Gear toys and ads towards stereotypically masculine things. Think about it. If not for the fact that children were already internalizing a sense of gender, then how do we explain that this marketing alienates girls?
It's not that women and girls aren't interested in combat-based play. Aggression and competition are, of course, possible human behaviors for people of all genders.
If it were just as simple as girls can like action too, then there would be no need to market only to boys. If one could use ads to socialize little girls to like violence, or little boys into liking baking, then there would be no need to separate toys. This gives us some indication as to the limits of marketing's power. Media does not completely shape our worldview, and often simply follows rather than leads social attitudes and beliefs. Marketers go out into society to study what people are doing and then sell it back to them. This may cause a feedback loop, but marketing is the output, not the input. So male-identified toys alienates girls, gendered marketing works, but LEGO should be expected to cut against the grain and is worth singling out for chastisement when they fail to do so. Perhaps we should examine things in a slightly broader context.
By contrast, the new Bratz Barbie-style Lady Fig, or mini doll, featured in Heart Lake City, is taller, curvier, and they wear little skirts. So LEGO spent 4 years and millions of dollars to research the desires of girls to create another Barbie wasteland.
The references to Bratz and Legos into a Barbie wasteland indicate that she is aware that LEGO does not market to girls in a vacuum. The industry at large is based on gender segregation. The trajectory of LEGO's marketing is certainly a piece of the puzzle, but is not the whole picture. What LEGO is doing is capitalizing on cultural norms. Does that completely absolve them of all responsibility? No, but in a rush to point a finger at LEGO, it is easy to lose sight of the context in which LEGO operates. For the people that think Anita is too ignorant to realize the systematic nature of the problem, she does maintain a broader perspective in her video on Kanye West that she fails to apply in the case of LEGO.
So who's to blame? Kanye clearly, but also Rockefeller Records, Universal Music Group, the entire music industry, and how the market functions in general.
So who's to blame? LEGO, the entire toy industry, Western culture, human psychology, and how the market functions in general?
The real takeaway from LEGO's research is that the literally billions of dollars that the media and toy companies spent over the last couple of decades on aggressively gendered marketing and gendered stereotyping has worked. All this marketing is inescapable, and young people and adults alike internalize these deeply harmful and limiting messages. Although we don't want to believe it, the truth of it is that advertising works to manipulate us, and it works really well, or else corporations wouldn't do it.
The enormous amount of money that advertisers are spending isn't just on producing and airing ads. It's also spent on the latest neuroscience research to find out exactly what images, feelings, and representations will appeal the most to developing minds. These messages are so manipulative, deeply embedded, and carefully crafted that it's even hard for us as adults to recognize them.
What is interesting about her point of view on marketing is that on one hand she claims that marketing has been so effective that it makes children wanting gender-segregated toys the social norm. On the other hand, she thinks that LEGO should ignore its own research and marketing trends and stick to her high-minded ideals. LEGO is a for-profit company operating in a marketplace where the prevailing social norms dictate that a certain approach is more profitable than others. Well, we looked at all the other toys that little girls liked, and we concluded that little girls like pink things and homemaking.
Secondly, LEGO needs to go back to the drawing board and create products that foster creativity and imagination that children of all genders will adore. They can start by de-emphasizing the macho testosterone and the combat, and create universally appealing sets that include occupations and adventure scenarios for children of all genders.
Anita's proposed solution to all this is to create universally appealing sets, but this is a fairly empty notion. What exactly constitutes universal appeal? LEGO could of course reduce their products to the generic blocks with no real gender or social connotations, but I don't think even Anita would go for that idea. If socialization defines what appeals to us, then universal appeal would only be achievable in a genderless, monocultural society. However, we do not live in an Ursula Le Guin novel. Look at it this way. Occupations and adventure scenarios are social constructs. For example, in the past, the frontier was a common setting for adventure stories. However, as the frontiers on Earth began to close, there was a shift in popular culture towards science fiction because space, the final frontier. Sailing ships became spaceships and exotic islands became exotic planets. The adventure scenarios changed with the culture. To use LEGO as a specific example, I, and my sisters for that matter, grew up with castle Legos. I have noticed that they have been taken on and off the market several times over the years as tastes change. My point is that you cannot so easily separate out one set of social constructs from another set of social constructs to create universal appeal. Moreover, the sad truth is, no matter how much fondness we may feel towards Legos, they are not in the business of social engineering. They are in the business of profit, and it is the society at large and their competitors in the market that tend to guide what they do. This leads me to a larger issue that I have with her videos. If media is a reflection of society, then to point your finger at the mirror is to point your finger to society by proxy. The problem comes when you forget that it is a reflection, The image in the mirror does not change by commanding it to change. Making the image change is much more difficult than reactionary finger wagging. Perhaps Anita lacks the audacity to tell parents how to raise their children, but parents, after all, are the ones buying the toys for their children. They also play a large role in the socialization of children, including gender norms. Anita's approach seems to be limited to a top-down view. One understated benefit of capitalism is that companies like Lego respond to consumer demand. This brings me back to the idea of banning toy advertisements. This might not be as radical as it sounds. We already have restrictions on certain types of advertising. The tactics of marketing to children are often predatory and manipulative. Children are not really rational consumers to be appealed to. The lack of ads aimed at children would not stop people from making toys or even advertising them. Rather, it would shift the target of advertising to the parents, who are the ones buying the toys to begin with, and in a sense are the true consumers. Currently, advertising attempts to leverage children against their parents by getting them to beg for the toys. With ads aimed at adults, the cognitive benefits of Lego would become a huge selling point, in which case we might well see a change in the gender trends of Lego. Little Einstein videos, while proven to not actually make kids smarter, do show that parents will buy just about anything with "this will make your child smarter" on the label. It takes adults to recognize something like the subtext of Legos. It also takes adults to decide what they will buy for their children and how they will encourage them to act. My point is that the problem is more systematic than Lego, or Hollywood, or advertisers, or any of the usual places Anita likes to point her finger. Actually addressing the problem might require a much more bottom-up approach. Also, the market responds to competition, so if more feminist-style toys sell, other companies would take notice and likely follow suit. Singling out and morally shaming Lego might not be the most effective tactic.